Kentucky Congressman Thomas Massie praised Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s move to remove the COVID-19 shot from the vaccine recommendation schedule for healthy children and pregnant women. Taking to X, Massie posted, quote, "This is a great first step. Millions of children will now be spared the known and unknown side effects of the COVID shots. CDC and FDA have been using your tax dollars to be liability-free, science-ignoring, fact-free marketing agents for vaccine manufacturers."
The Health and Human Services Director made the announcement Tuesday with the NIH Chief Jay Bhattacharya and FDA Commissioner Marty Makary in tow, saying, let's take a look.
Last year, the Biden administration urged healthy children to get yet another COVID shot despite the lack of any clinical data to support the repeat booster strategy in children.
The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention normally decides who should get the shots, but it currently has no director. So while critics of the CDC and pharmaceutical industry were very pleased about the news, some of RFK Jr.'s opponents assert that he was breaking a promise he made during his confirmation hearings, that he would not take away someone's vaccine.
Well, I am, as you can probably guess, thrilled by this news. This is great and perfectly consistent with the science, which is that their otherwise healthy children do not need the COVID vaccine. You can get it if you want, but it's not a recommended thing. I saw a lot of people screaming about this online, saying, "Oh no, anti-science stuff is taking over." They probably don't know that this is consistent with what many European countries do, Nordic countries, Finland, Sweden, and others, similarly stopped recommending the COVID vaccine for otherwise healthy young people. They don't need it. You can still get it. It's not banned. This actually has to do, the vaccine schedule recommendation thing has to do with what is covered under liability. So if you had an adverse reaction, could you sue the vaccine manufacturer if it's on the schedule? This is my understanding. You can't, basically. So this is, I think even some people on the left should want more, not that I'm claiming that vaccines are unsafe or something, but in the case of an adverse reaction, they certainly can be unsafe in some circumstances. Should you be able to get some accountability for the vaccine manufacturer, that can only happen if they're not on the schedule. And again, this is just for otherwise healthy children, pregnant women, perfectly consistent with the science. So what's the big deal? Why are people shrieking on social media, Lindsey?
Kind of like the first conversation that we had, hiring your friends. This is where it goes wrong. RFK Jr. is not a public health expert. He has an opinion about vaccines, which is very skeptical, as we all know when he came in this position. And this is his ideology, not science. I like to go off of numbers. So vaccines work. More than 1 million children have developed long COVID. Vaccines protect from that. The CDC shows that 2 or more doses of this vaccine were 40% effective. So even if 40% is not a good enough number, isn't that enough that a lot of kids are being protected? And also, if kids recover quickly and don't need it because they're healthy, passing it to their elderly family members is not a great thing and could create real problems in those older people, which is why we want to vaccinate the kids.
But it doesn't stop you from passing it.
I know, but we want to protect people from getting it, and then they won't pass it along.
Protect you from getting it either.
I know, but if you have the vaccine, you're less likely probably to attract
less
COVID.
Likely, probably. Again, these are not proven.
These
are not demonstrated scientific facts.
No, these are actual numbers. 40% effective at preventing emergency room visits. So get it,
that's different.
If you
that's
get
the
it,
exact,
you won't be in ER.
You just did the bait and switch. Yes, vaccines do significantly reduce serious adverse risks of COVID.
But don't parents want that for their children?
No, because the children aren't at serious risk anyway. That's the difference. If you're older, if you're immunocompromised, if you're in a risk category for COVID, you should get the vaccine because it will reduce the likelihood of, yes, an emergency room visit. But the statistical likelihood of a healthy young person being admitted to the emergency room because of COVID is so close to zero, there's no reason to get the COVID shot. Doctors don't just give you things that are not necessary. Like, doctors aren't pumping us full of antibiotics at all times because, well, you could get some kind of infection. Like, we don't give things to people needlessly. We give things to people if there's a medical reason. There is not a medical reason, not a necessity, to give this shot, to give multiple booster shots to otherwise healthy young people. There just isn't.
People
it's
are
not
still dying
protective.
from COVID every day.
Not
People
kids,
still,
not young people.
Yeah, but people in general in America.
Well, and they should get old people, and they should get the COVID shot.
You should make that decision when you're in an emergency situation. And so if you're going to be around your grandparents, then the idea is
your grandparents should get it, not you.
No, the idea is that you protect yourself and them.
But it
We're
doesn't
just
work
being-
like that.
No, that's the idea of public health research and why the CDC generally has meetings about
No
this.
evidence has
Wait,
produced that works.
Let me finish. The CDC generally has meetings about this where they would decide something like this and it would go to a vote and they would come out with their decision. What RFK has done is skip that entire process and just come out with his decision, and he is not a doctor. And so that's my problem. I want real science-based recommendations from actual people who are doctors or have researched this, especially when I think about my kid and what
Do you
is
think
best for her.
Finland, Sweden, and Germany are not making
Well, we don't
doctor-informed
Does the U.S.
decisions?
follow other countries? You argue that we shouldn't in some cases, and now we should follow what they're doing. Like,
No, I'm
we're
with
supposed to
Europe.
lead
I think we
and do
should
our
be
thing.
more like Europe, which has a far more sane COVID approach than we do.
Well, I want to protect children, and I want to make sure that if they can get a vaccine and it could stop them from having long COVID, possible emergency room visits, brain fog, fatigue, these are all things that can come from catching COVID once. This will stop
First
them
of all,
from-
those things are highly scientifically debated about how real they are.
among
how-
scientists at least, not
about
RFK shouldn't
about
be just
everyone.
debating about
I am highly skeptical of some of the most extreme long COVID claims. They are very contentious and not poorly.
There are
sort of
real people that
brain
we
fog.
both know that have
No,
long COVID.
Well, they're lying, but there are lingering respiratory symptoms. Certainly can be the case for people recovering from COVID or any other disease. Some of these symptoms they're describing seem clearly psychological to me, having more to do with the effects of the lockdowns. When they studied this, they studied long COVID in the initial study that did it. Then later they looked back and those people didn't even have COVID, and they were all claiming they had long COVID-like symptoms. People exaggerate their physical health, their mental health, and yes, you can obviously have ongoing complications for any kind of disease. But the greater fiction is pretending that this is helpful in any of those cases. It's not.
Well, I just think we should leave it up to a board of certified experts to have a conversation about what the best next steps for our country are, and not just RFK.
What if the experts are all
No,
have
they
a
can't be
financial
passed with a wide.
No, what if they have a financial incentive to give greater legal protection to Pfizer and Moderna?
Well, then we should have a different conversation. I'm definitely not
I
for
mean, that's
protecting
why we're
big medical.
But that's what the vaccine schedule does.
No,
It
but I think that
protects
it
them.
also protects children, and so that's a real conversation. I just want an expert making a recommendation, and I would trust that we can try to come up with the WHO, CDC, and not just RFK, right? I know they all have 3 letters in them, but I want to trust those two former instead of the latter.
You don't trust RFK Jr., but what if an expert, if someone put on an expert hat and they said to you, yeah, an otherwise healthy 13-year-old boy does not need to get a COVID booster, would you accept that from the expert?
I would accept that from my
is
child.
I'm telling you, that is
doctor.
the expert
Well,
consensus.
the pediatricians were recommending the same thing. So now it's up to them to decide if they want to recommend it to parents or follow the CDC's guidelines. And so they're in like this tight spot where I know, as somebody who was pregnant and had a baby that had these options, it was highly recommended by the pediatrician and my doctor, my OBGYN. So that's kind of like I think she based it off research. I trust her. She did it herself. And so I'm trusting people like that often follow
I'm not saying
CDC
don't trust your
guidelines.
doctor. If your doctor might know some circumstance that is not broadly applicable, they might say, you should get it or what. It's not trying to. Every circumstance is different. I'm not saying there's no circumstance by which a pregnant person or a young person should get the vaccine or different. Every person is different, but as generally applicable rule, it's not harmful, but it's not necessary, and we don't do things that are unnecessary for people in a medical sense. Is a general recommendation.
I think we're going to keep talking about this. No one's going to let it go.
Harmless chant or a call for genocide? What South African leadership and President Trump are saying about kill the Boer? That's next.